And we will get this started. So this is class number 2 of the Agent DNA. The first class, for those of you that were there or signed up, the first class was kind of a foundational overview of what your Agent DNA is. If you haven't watched that, and I encourage you guys to either go back and watch the recording or join me. I'm going to do another foundations class, the exact same one that I did last month. I'm going to do another one at the end of April. So I'm going to encourage you guys to jump back into that if you want, or you haven't seen the original foundations class. This is a series. It's going to be a series of approximately 4 after today, 4 more classes that goes over those pieces of your Agent DNA. And we're going to start with, for some of you, the most exciting portion of the class, and for others of you, the most complicated and potentially, I'm going to use the word boring part of the class. I think it's one of the most important things that you could do. And in future classes, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at how to build and engage with your audience, whether that's your sphere of influence or more of a casual audience, like a probate list, like a farm, like a social media list, something like that. So that's probably what we're going to do in the next class. After that, we're going to move into rituals and habits. So what are those daily rituals, habits need to look like in your business? How do you keep yourself on track when you start to fall off? Then we're going to move to narrative building. So narrative is what you say and how you say it. How many of you have been around someone who just oozes commission breath, right? Every time you're around them, you're like, this person is only trying to sell. I can't take being around this person, right? I have people like that. I can think of one person in particular that every time we talk, it's a lender. Hey, Bruce, when are you going to send me some more business? Hey, Bruce, do you want to go hang out? I'd love to pick your brain on how you can send me more business. Hey, Bruce, I can't wait. Let's take a weekend trip. I want to take a weekend trip, get to know about your business, and find out how I can get all your leads. Okay, that's every single conversation is that person, and because of that, I have held this individual off for many, many, many years from engaging with me. If the person led with value, if they led with help, education, resources first, I wouldn't be holding them at arm's length. So the narrative that we use, the words we use, and how we use them is really important to be able to draw business to us. And so that's going to be one of the next upcoming classes that we go over. And then probably the last class, and these are in no particular order, I'm just kind of going off of what I think we're going to do. Most likely that the last class that we're going to use is going to be all about building and establishing your brand. Now, this series may end up stretching out a little bit longer. So it could stretch just a little longer. It could go to 6, 7, 8 classes. It depends on how deep we get into some of these topics. But I have designed it to be a 5-part series after the foundations. So after foundations. And if you guys would, I don't want to have leads popping up into the middle of everybody's page. So let me move this away. All right. Otherwise, you guys are going to see some kind of private client and lead information on your screens. All right. So someone asked, can I share the link of the DNA number 1? Yeah, sure. If you would shoot me an email at Bruce at, probably better to shoot it to Bruce at coachbrucehill.com. I'll forward that recording out to you. Okay. And then of course, we're going to do that class again here in the middle of April. All right. We're actually going to have that class live before the next class where we talk about building your audience and engaging with your audience. Hey, Dwayne, what do you have?
Yeah, excuse me. I'm a little confused. We did foundations, then we did role play, which was, I believe, last week.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Where did I miss DNA number 1? I don't recall seeing anything on.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you guys missed DNA number one, let me just give you guys a very, very brief overview. By the way, if you did get this particular class link, it does mean that, no, it does not mean. Um, Generally, if you got this class link and you jump in here, you probably at least registered for the DNA number one. So DNA, the first class is DNA Foundations. I teach it a couple of times, or I teach it once every 2 to 3 months. And Foundations just lays out the overview of your business DNA. So every business has a DNA that's composed of 5 pieces. So if you are in a service-based business, you rely on people coming to you for a service that you provide. The 5 elements that you have to get right in your business, or you have to have an audience. That audience needs to be engaged. So these need to be people that watch you, that get value from you, that know who you are, and ultimately view you as the trusted expert. So you have to have an audience. Number 2 is you have to have the right words to say to your audience. You could go out there just like my lender friend and constantly be begging for business every time and repel people. So we want to build a narrative and conversation approaches that attract people to use you versus push them away. I'll never use I don't want to say never. I probably wouldn't ever use the lender that keeps pestering me, because he keeps pestering me. It's not because he's not any good. It's just a pestering conversation nonstop. And I want you guys to kind of learn how to not be that person. I think a lot of you probably aren't that person. On the flip side, many agents are way too passive in the conversations they use. If you're not getting the business that you want from your audience, it's probably either because you're a little overbearing or you're not aggressive enough with asking for business or teaching people how to use you. Okay, so we're going to talk about narrative. So we've got audience number 1, narrative number 2. We have rituals number 3. So what are those day-to-day, week-to-week activities? How do you maybe score yourself or give yourselves some sort of accountability to stick to the rituals that you need? We're going to touch on a few of those rituals today. And then your brand would be part number 4. So how do you build a brand and make sure that you're presenting a clear, attractive, and concise image to the audience that you work with? And then last, technically first, is today. So today is your DNA mapping, and DNA mapping basically just means business planning. If I called it business planning, nobody would show up though. So I call it something fancy like DNA mapping, because then I can get people to show up and actually build a foundation for their business. All right, so we're gonna dive into business planning. Now, if you didn't see that, send me that email, bruce@coachbrucehill.com, ask for the recording. And or jump into the next DNA Foundations class, where I go a little bit deeper into what each one of those means. And I'm going to just kind of let everybody know that that DNA Foundations class is kind of elementary, but we do dig into those pieces a little bit. Okay, and then we really break them down in the subsequent classes, of which today is class number 1 after the Foundations class, and not Probate Foundations. This is DNA Foundations. So I always try to start every single class or series with a Foundations training that kind of launches us into deeper and deeper detail. All right.
Okay, so in short, I don't think I missed anything. I just got called by a different name. Also, technically, while I have you, when I click on the chat down here, it opens in a sidebar, but when you click again, normally it goes away, but it's not. So I don't know if that's my issue or
it should just be it's probably an issue on your end. Let me see if it does for me. Yeah, it usually does go away. You can always click up near participants on the top right corner. There's a little drop down that you could click, and then click close, but it doesn't matter. We're going to be sharing our screen through most of this anyway. So okay. Let me kind of dive into our business planning. I call it our map. So there's a saying inside of neurolinguistic programming training. So NLP training, if any of you have ever taken that, if you haven't, I highly encourage it, especially if you want to know what to say and how to say it. NLP training is spectacular. But there's a saying inside of the NLP kind of organization that says the map is not the territory. Has anyone heard that? The map is not the territory. Is that new to everybody? Basically what it means is I could lay out a map in front of everyone right now, give you an overview, and you might even see some geography on the map. Maybe it has some raised mountains and things like that. But in no way does that map actually show you what it's actually like on the ground, right? It doesn't show you what it's like on the ground. You can see an overview and make sure that you're kind of headed in the right direction. But the territory itself is covered with trees, and there's creeks in the way, and there's rivers that you have to cross, and there's downed logs. I mean, just imagine all the different things that pop up in the middle of a map that you can't see when you're looking at an overview. So what we're going to do in this class is we're going to start with an overview of everyone's business. All right, with an overview of the business, we're going to kind of set the compass in a particular direction. And then as we get into the details of the class, we're going to start to look at where those pitfalls are, where things might interrupt your schedule. They might interrupt your plans. And we're going to break down and kind of get down to your core business needs that are needed on a daily basis. And if you can get to the core business needs that you need to implement in your business on a daily basis, and you hold those things as non-negotiable, you'll be able to get through any obstacles that you have, as long as you have some discipline, which is why I teach the rituals class in a couple of months, because it takes discipline to stick to the plan. So we're just going to create the plan today. And then as we get in further into the series, you'll learn how to stick to it. Okay. Most of you are probably going to come out of this series with accountability partners and different things so that you can get to the plan. So somebody who has a goal, I want you to raise your hand or unmute yourself and tell me what your business goal is for the next 12 months. Maybe it's your business goal for 22. I don't care what it is. Anybody that has written out or thought of your business goal? Does nobody have goals? All right. Any goals? Joe, yes.
My goal is that I have to say that I have been really not keeping up over the last 8 months of looking at the leads and all of this stuff. So my goal is to just religiously, I guess you could say non-negotiable, to get back into the groove to actually help your people in probate heck, that they could just actually, get back into the program, basically.
Yep. Okay. And so what's that going to mean? How much money is that going to make you? All right. I realize we're coming from an empathetic and an altruistic position, but your business has to have a goal. What's your business goal?
Oh, never thought about that.
Anybody have a business goal for the year? All right. If not, we're going to create one. All right, Denise. You're on mute. Sorry.
I don't have a business goal for probate, but for my real estate business, my goal is to make $200,000 this year. I am a part-time agent. I do have a full-time job. I did I almost made 150 last year, but this year I'm trying to make 200,000, and it's coming from my past clients, my sphere. I'm adding probate to it, and farming.
Excellent. You're gonna like this class. So 200,000. That's a map, by the way, guys. That's a map. You know which direction you're headed in. You're either headed south, east, west, or north. Okay. You know which direction that's going to be. So a business plan is kind of like a nice fabric sweater or something. You can throw some strings together and drape it over you like fishnet, or you can actually put pieces into it that actually create create a good looking or a valuable piece of clothing. And a lot of times we will take our overall goal, which is our map, and Denise has a goal of $200,000. We can take that and we can tie a couple of strings together and put it on our body and say, hey, this is a business plan. And while I would agree that's a much better business plan than most people have, there's really no detail to it. It's not going to serve you much if there's a not tightly woven plan that goes into it. So what we want to do is kind of tightly weave that plan. Here's someone, Steve, real estate goal, 35 closings. 50 closings is the stretch goal. So Steve, I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself or not. If not, that's fine. What's your what financial goal that goes along with those 35 or 50 closings?
Well, it's average commission is 15,000. So
Okay,
that's around 600.
good, perfect. All right, so so we've got a couple of people with an overall an overview of their map. Steve is putting some fabric around it, so he's kind of planned a few extra details, so he knows a little bit of the territory, not just an overview of the map. And that's what we're going to dive into, and I want to kind of start as we jump into our workbook. And for those of you that don't like math, you don't like workbooks, I apologize for this. This is a necessary evil, right? There's some of you that love this stuff. Not everyone. I try to go through this with my wife and she's like, just fill it out for me and show me what I have to do, right? Stick with me if that's you, okay? Stick with me for this class if it's you. Scott, by the way, Fitchner, you'll like this. I actually know what's in the workbook this time. So, as we start building this out, I want to take you guys back to the class number 1, the Agent DNA Foundations class. And the very first story that I told you guys about going on the camping trip with Chad Corbett, who, if you don't know, was one of the founders of All the Leads, a good friend of mine. He called me one day and he said, hey, I'm going camping on Hatteras Island in the Outer Banks. And I was wondering if you wanted to go. And I was like, hey, man, that sounds really fun. When are we going? And he said, well, I'm leaving today. So, of course, I kind of like last minute things. My wife does not, but I said, I probably can't go. I yelled at her and I said, hey, I'm thinking about going camping. She said, when? Today. She said, okay, go ahead. So I go downstairs, I start packing everything up, and I realized I hadn't camped in so long that I didn't have any of the equipment. And I was like, that's all right. I'll just buy some on the way out of town. So I jump in the car, I start driving toward the Outer Banks, which is about four hours away from me. And I get halfway to kind of the last stop of civilization before you get to the Outer Banks. And I stop at a Walmart and I called Chad from the Walmart parking lot and I said, hey, I'll be there in a couple of hours. I left my gear at home, little fib. I didn't have any gear. I left my gear at home. I'm going to go into Walmart and buy some of the things I need. And if any of you have ever hung out with Chad, one of his favorite sayings is the most expensive thing that you'll ever buy is the thing that you're going to have to buy twice. So he repeated this to me and he said, there's a Bass Pro Shop here on the islands. Just stop here and pick up your gear here, get something higher quality so that it doesn't break down. You don't have to buy it twice. Great idea. Okay, great idea. So are any of you here from or near the Outer Banks? Has anyone been to the Outer Banks? Anybody? No? Okay, so let me give you guys a guess. What's one store on the Outer Bank that the Outer Banks does not have? Does not have a pro shop, an outdoor shop. There's nothing there. So I finished the last half of my journey, 2 hours. I get onto the islands and there is absolutely nowhere to buy gear. So I turn around, I head back to the Walmart 2 hours away. I walk in and the shelves are completely bare in the camping section, completely bare. There's one sleeping bag. That's it. I was like, well, I guess I'm balling some clothes up and sleeping, putting my head on some clothes tonight. It's a relatively decent night. It's October and in the Outer Banks, so it can kind of swing, typically 40 to 60 degrees at night. It's like, it's going to be okay. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. I'll call a buddy of mine, have him bring a tent down tomorrow. I'll just sleep under the stars. I thought this is going to be a great idea. So I roll my sleeping bag out that night. It's nice. I get in the sleeping bag. It's amazing. I don't camp a lot, but I love adventure. I love nature, and I'm laying under the stars and I drift off to sleep. And has anyone fallen asleep with maybe like a TV or a radio on, or maybe a light on or anything like that? And then you wake up in the middle of the night and you wonder why the TV's so loud. Okay. Did the TV get louder when you wake up, or were your senses just a little more heightened because you were coming out of sleep? And I believe that your senses are just a little more heightened. So I wake up and I feel like the moon, which is full, by the way, is boring a hole through my eyeballs. And I'm like, this is terrible. I can't, it's so bright. I might as well be staring into the sun. There's people over in the distance that are talking, and it sounds like it's amplified right in my ears. It's just absolutely crazy. And my senses are all heightened because I'm just coming out of sleep. And it was terrible. And after a couple of maybe 20, 30 minutes, the wind started blowing right into the top of my sleeping bag. And I freeze. For hours, I laid there freezing. I get up, I take clothes out of my duffel bag, I shove them down into the sleeping bag. I'm trying to do anything to add some insulation to my experience. I'm cold, the moon is breaking through my eyelids. People are making too much noise. I'm just not getting any sleep. It's awful. I get up again, I go to the car. Now, most of you would say, why wouldn't you just stay in the car? I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. And I'm pulling anything out that I can put in my sleeping bag to insulate myself just a little bit. And it is not working. And I suffer for hours and hours and hours that night in pure misery. And finally, at about 4:30 in the morning, I get up and I was like, screw it. I'm just gonna get up and walk around, warm myself up with movement. So I get up, I walk around the campground. I come back and I'm sitting there and I'm like, where am I going to get some coffee? And as I'm looking at my sleeping bag, standing up, I realized that my sleeping bag was turned into the direction that the wind had been blowing for the past 4 hours. So the opening is facing the wind. And I thought to myself, all this time, for hours of misery, the solution was as simple as taking my sleeping bag and just shifting it in the opposite direction. I turned my sleeping bag around, I crawled in, and I slept like a baby for the next hour until everybody got up and woke me up. But it was that simple. And the thing is when you're in the experience that you're in, and I really thought about never telling that story again. I thought when people started to get up, I thought, maybe I'll just keep this quiet. But it was such a valuable lesson to me that oftentimes these solutions that we have in our life and our business are really as simple as getting outside of the sleeping bag, taking a little walk around and looking at it from a slightly different perspective. And as embarrassing as it is to say that I'm the idiot that couldn't figure out to just turn the sleeping bag around, I'm going to bet that most of us have that same sleeping bag experience, where we have issues in our business or our life that are a simple tweak to be able to fix. But because we're in the experience, all we're thinking about is the moon's hurting my eyes. It's too noisy. I wish these people would shut up. The wind is blowing in. I'm cold. We're thinking about all these things and because we're thinking about those, we're not thinking about the simple adjustment that leads to a solution. So as we kind of dive into your business, we are going to set you up properly so that you really don't have to make that many adjustments. You're oriented in the proper position. That's ultimately where we're going to go today. So I am going to share my screen, and we're going to start talking about how to get there. So everybody sees this. Hopefully you guys have it all printed off. There's going to be pieces of this class and this workbook that you are probably going to complete later. Okay. And as we get to a place that you can complete later, that's completely fine. But I want to go over, I'll let you know when we get there. I want to go over this first page for now. And a lot of this first page is going to be for completion later. 1 second. I got somebody that needs to go on mute real fast. Sorry, guys. All right. Mute. Okay, so as we dive in here, this first section is something that many of you are going to complete later, and that's perfectly, absolutely fine for you to complete this later. But the first thing that I want you to start thinking about in your business is where your power is. Okay, what's your greatest strength, and how are you going to amplify that and use that strength more in your business? Does anyone have a strength that they want to volunteer and share with us that often you find yourself trying to minimize because you go, I don't want to only work in my strength. I really need to spread myself around. Does anyone have a strength like that sometimes you don't lean into enough? Anybody? Mine in the real estate business, in the real estate space, if I'm selling, is I'm a great networker. I can go out and I can meet people very quickly, build a relationship, and within typically a week, they would consider me a friend and a valuable asset to their life. That's a power that I have. The problem that I run into is often I get really busy in the day-to-day activity of my business, which, by the way, is a weakness. So I spend more time working through weaknesses than I spend in my strength. So I want you guys to think about this. What's your greatest strength? And ultimately, what adjustments are you going to make to spend more time in your strengths? The next thing I want you to ask yourselves is, what are your greatest weaknesses? Okay. And how are you either going to overcome? So I've got the word overcome here, or delegate. Okay. Overcome or delegate your weakness. The ultimate thing is I need everyone to realize that if you're weak in an area, that's not necessarily an opportunity to spend more time on. You need to spend more time in your strength, less time in your weakness, if you have the financial ability to delegate. Okay. I want you to think about what is appealing to you. So a part of this, and a lot of you guys are going to say, hey, this is business planning. It's really not. We are ultimately the best versions of ourselves as business owners when we are taking advantage of the things that we like to do. So are there outside interests that you want to focus on over the next year to 3 years? And if there are outside interests, what are those? So you're just going to fill that out. All right. And then last, I want you guys to think about your efficiency. That's supposed to say efficiency. I got a typo. Effectivity. That's not a word. That's supposed to say efficiency. So when are you most efficient working inside of your business? All right. Now, this is where I'm not going to let you guys slide by without any feedback here. Of your time spent working, what percentage of it do you guys think that you spend in your business, taking care of clients, prospecting, doing transaction paperwork? What's the amount of time or percentage of business time do you spend inside of your business?
Can I do this later?
On. Right. I had someone speak up. What was that? Anybody have a guess as to your business? Has anyone tracked this or thought about it before? Nope. Okay. I told you guys I'm not going to let you slide. Somebody tell me, somebody guess in your business, how much time do you spend doing the day-to-day kind of, I'm going to call it minutia. And it's not minutia, it's really important stuff, but transaction management, paperwork, showings, different things like that that are in your business.
I do 4 hours.
4 hours, 4 out of 8. Is that
Yep.
fair? Okay.
Yep.
All right, Scott, what do you think?
Probably 30-40% maybe.
30 to 40%? Great. All right, good.
Bruce, I think that it's really less because as we go with COVID, as we were working home, there's a lot of distractions. So it's very hard to actually, focus.
Mm-hmm. It's become pretty hard for those of us that are that aren't our best at home. Of course, I'm not my best at the office. I love going to the office, but I talk to people too much at the office. But yeah, it can be a lot very distracting during the COVID time. Denise, did you have something?
Oh, yeah. For me, I would say about 12% because my goal is to call 25 people a day.
Mhm.
And at the end of the week, I've only called about 12.
Yep.
So
Okay.
that's very disappointing. I am not structured, I am not organized, and that's why I'm here.
All right. Cool. Good. One more, David. I think you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, probably about 35%. And and my background's technology. So I spent about the last year and a half, I work with my son and a team, and we just systematize so much using
Mhm.
KV Core and Trello and a program called Transactly to
Yep.
cut that back in half at least. And it just
Outstanding.
so it makes things a lot easier too. You don't have to think
Yep.
about a lot of the repetition that's in the transaction management. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep. Does anyone else besides me, and this is a rhetorical question, I don't need feedback on this, but does anyone else besides me ever get to the end of your day and you look back and you go, man, I had this project, and this project that I thought I'd get done today. Where did my day go? Where did it go? And typically those where did it go questions pop up in your day or your week or your month because you spent the majority of your time answering the phone, negotiating deals, showing clients. You spent the majority of your time maybe doing paperwork, different things like that. And those are in the business activities. So as you guys kind of fill this out, I want you ultimately thinking and really don't just give it 30 seconds thought. I want you thinking about what times you're more effective at the in the business work, what times of the day or week you're more effective in the on the business work. And I'm glad David said what he did because the systems, those are on the business activity. Those are things that drive your business forward. Where in the business, that's labor work. That's the work that you could, you could pay yourself an hourly rate for. Okay. So I want you to think about where you're kind of spending too much time in the business, or maybe when you're most effective, or when you should delegate your in the business versus your on the business. And then last here is I want you to think about how you're going to structure your day to have the largest impact. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples here really quickly. Examples would be me. I used to time block my entire day. So I'd wake up in the morning and I would time block my 15 minutes of email checking. I would time block 10 minutes of meditation. I would time block 1 hour of prospecting. I would time block 30 minutes of reading. I'd time block all these different things through the day. And when you looked at my calendar, it was just like bam, bam, back to back to back. And that is a good thing for many people. So what I'm going to tell you guys is that is not a bad thing for many of you. For me, it was really bad. If you're the type of person that may be ADD or ADHD, those types of things, those blocks of time take energy and time to switch hats. So if you're switching from checking email to prospecting to showings to paperwork to the various different things that you're going to do through the day, and especially if you have sort of a little bit of a chemical imbalance up here, then it might take you 20 minutes to actually get into the zone, or 50 minutes to get into the zone. And when I found that I was spending an hour prospecting, it would take me 20 minutes to get locked in. And then I'd prospect for 20 minutes while locked in. And then I'd spend 20 minutes thinking about, oh gosh, I got to switch over to emails here in a little bit. And I would find that that time block was only like 20 minutes of actual efficiency. So for someone like me, I typically recommend that you block off big chunks of time. So that if it takes you 20 minutes to get in the zone on what you're doing, you can spend a couple of hours in the zone. So if you're going to write letters, if you're going to write content, if you're going to do videos, if you're going to prospect, block off a big healthy chunk of time and then move some of those other tasks into bigger portions of time on a different day, if that makes sense to you guys. So that's just kind of an example of the way that you want to think about changing up your in the business activities versus your on the business activities. Right. So you guys work on that on your own time. For the rest of this class, we're going to kind of dive into breaking out your goals and figuring out what that means to your day to day. And the reason that this is going to be different than any other business planning class that you've done is we're going to talk about what this means to your business. So we're going to spend some time first and foremost on the goal. And I do expect plenty of questions here. So the questions that I'm expecting here are completely fine. You guys unmute yourself, raise your hand. If you chat the question, I might not see it. So raise your hand at least if you've got a question on this. But I want everyone to start on page number 2 of your workbook with your net take home goal. How much money do you want to bring home this year? After taxes, after everything, what are you gonna put in your bank account this year? Everyone needs to come up with a plan. If anyone wants to share it, that's fine. I've heard 200,000. I've heard 600,000. All right. By the way, who said 600? I can't remember who said 600. Was that a net or was that a gross? If you said 600, because I can't remember who said that. Right. So write that down, your net goal. Next thing we want to do after we come up with our net goal is we want to come in and total up our cost of doing business. By the way, this all starts with basically just hard costs, business costs. Not necessarily marketing at this point. So if you're spending money on leads, things like that, we're going to put it at the bottom, but we want to work on our hard costs. So first and foremost, and I don't want everyone to take too long figuring this out. So we want to figure out what your total licensing fees are. If you're in real estate, just put a guesstimate on here. You can always print another version of this and fill in the details. Those licensing fees are MLS expenses, key box expenses, realtor dues, state commission, licensing, things like that. So I want you to total up your licensing fees. Next is I want you to total up your semi-fixed operating costs. So these are going to be things like rent, utilities, maybe not if you live you work in your house, but if you have an office space, office fees. How much does your website cost? If you guys have an ATL website, how much does that cost? Do you have a CRM? How much does that cost? Your phone, your dialers. Okay, so this is just kind of a cheat sheet for you guys to go through and come up with a total for your semi-fixed costs. All right, do not get bogged down here because it's going to take us hours and hours and hours to go through this if we don't hit it from a high level. You can fill in the details later. So if you don't know, guess your semi-fixed costs that go here. All right, we're going to take what we got from licensing and semi-fixed costs and add those together. So somebody chime in and tell me what those are. So let's just, I'm just going to do, for example here, I'm going to say that every year I spend about $1,500 on these. And every year I spend about $5,000 here. And so down here, I'm going to say that I've got $6,500 that I spend on operating expenses. Now we want to move to our marketing budget. So what do you guys spend on marketing? This includes leads. This includes maybe if you have VAs. This includes any farming. Does anyone have any expenses that they want to share, annual expenses that they want to share on their marketing? Does anyone stick to a percentage, by the way? Am I the only one that allocates a percentage of my plan to marketing? Okay, so if you don't, let me kind of give you guys the tried and true. All right, 25 to 35% of your expected net income could go toward marketing. And by the way, marketing does include leads. So if you're buying leads, you could include that in there. So if I want to make $100,000 and I want to spend 25% of my net income, or if I want to spend about 25% of what I make on marketing, I'm just going to say 25,000. If my goal for Denise is 200 and I want to spend 25% of that, that would be $50,000. Okay, so you guys are just going to put your marketing and your lead generation expenses into this line. And then last is you're just going to take 6,500 and whatever you put here. By the way, I'm going to say 56,500. This is relatively accurate for me. Don't have a heart attack if you're not used to this. I used to spend this in a month. Okay, I don't anymore. This is relatively accurate for me today. All right, so 5,600 is how much it costs me to do business. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop down, and you guys are going to notice here that I've got areas for you guys to do some math and some scratch work. So if you mess up, try to do it up here on the scratch section of the page. So I'm going to drop down here and I'm going to bring my net income goal down, and we're sticking with what Denise said.
Hey, Bruce,
Mm-hmm.
where's the book?
The PDF version of it.
Any version of it?
Can you guys see what I'm sharing?
Yeah, but
Okay, all right, just making sure. Okay, hold on. I'll share the. I'll put the book. I'll put the book in.
Thank you.
The book did come in the announcement email. So it's also in the announcement email, and you're going to get a copy if you want to go back and work through this separately later. So what we do, and I just put it in. What we do is we take our net income goal. And before we even add our business expenses, we're going to have to figure out what our taxes are going to be. So as a general rule of thumb for a lot of you, and some of you are higher than this, some of you are lower than this, what I want to do with most of you is assume that you've got a 30% tax rate. So we're going to drop our income down here, 200,000, and multiply it by 1.3. And guess what? I don't have my phone with me. I can't do the math. Somebody do that math for me. 200,000 times 1.3. It's actually pretty easy.
$200,000 times 1.3.
Yeah, 200,000.
260,000.
Yep, 260,000. All right. So you're going to do the same thing for your goal. If you have $400,000 goal, that means that you're adding 30% on top of your net take home. That would be 520. Okay, so I want you guys to do the math. Anyone lost at this point? I know not everyone's a math wizard. Is anyone lost that needs a quick explanation? All right. So if not, at this point, we're going to drop our 260 down. By the way, I kind of color coded anything that's supposed to match. If you're not looking at a color copy of it, that's completely fine. This line here, you're just going to drop down your goal, and you're going to add your brokerage split. All right. Everybody's different here. All right. So assuming that you hit this kind of goal, how much money will you have paid your brokerage if you're not independent over that period of time? So for me, I'm going to, this isn't mine, I am a broker, but I'm just gonna pretend that if I made $260,000, that my brokerage would take $35,000. I'm just gonna pretend. And now we're gonna come up with 260 plus 35,000. We're gonna come up with our gross income before the company split, which in this case is 295,000. Right. We're going to add our business expense. So business expense, by the way, you guys see it here. It's taken from the cost of business worksheet on page number 1. So my business expense is 56,500. So I'm just going to add that here. And we're going to get a total of what? Somebody do the math for me real quick. I don't know where my phone is. 295 plus 56,500. Then you're going to do your own math too. $351,500. Am I losing you guys? Let me know. All right. So this is.
What was it you said? I was writing my stuff down.
Would you say that again?
I said, what was the math that you needed?
No, I got it. I was just looking
Oh, you
for
got
the
Hi.
total of 295 plus
Check it out.
56,500. So
I'm
if you
so
guys are
impressed.
following my worksheet, and I know everyone needs to be doing their own, but if
I
you're
want to show
following
you, I'll
mine,
show you the
you're
before and
gonna make
after when you're like totally done, but
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm
200. One
so
moment,
impressed.
guys.
All those dead
I'm
ones up
talking.
there, there's like 5 in there. We're gonna cut all of them down.
It looks really good. So, I mean, I would,
I can't figure
I
out where
want
the,
them down, but
where the
I would just
talking's
tackle what you
coming
can
from.
tackle.
Hello, hello. Anybody?
So the bunch that's right there, you know how they're like kind of dead? Do you want me to cut?
There we go. All right, perfect. Okay, sorry guys. All right, so if you're following along with me, we're just going to total up our business expenses, our taxes, our brokerage splits, and we're going to realize that if I wanted to make 200,000 net, I really need to make 351,500. Right. So those of you that had given me a goal for your year, be it 200, 600, or something else, what's your new number? What's the new number for you guys? Throw them out. Don't be embarrassed if it's too low, or don't feel bad if it's too high. What do you guys have? Anybody?
I wasn't one of those, Bruce, but I had 400,000 as a goal, and 643,000 was the business income needed.
643. Let me ask you a question. Does that scare you, or does that seem pretty doable?
Well, I can't get to work any earlier in the morning, but so I'm just going to keep plugging away at it.
All right. Well, we'll
Yeah.
figure out what it means if you've got a territorial plan. Okay, not an overview, but an actual territory. So this number right here that you guys should have come up with, and I want to hear from a few other people on what kind of number they came up with, because we're going to hold you accountable. A part of this class is so that you can be held accountable to the actions. If you feel like your number is too big, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having a number that's too big. Doesn't make you look like an ass either. All right. So this is the map. All right. I now have an overview map of what I have to make, and this is a goal. I need to make 351,000. Denise, need to make 351,000. I'm not sure exactly what your numbers look like, but this is what kind of gross revenue you need to pull in to be able to hit that $200,000 goal, assuming that your detailed numbers break out similar to mine. Okay. All right. That's the map. Now what we want to do is start getting into the territory where we can see what those activities need to look like. And what they need to look like. Okay, so first things first is I want everyone to shout out your average home sale price in your area. What are you guys working on? I'm at 428,000. 6 years ago when I moved here, I was at 265,000, and that was amazing. That was 3 times what my former market was. My former market, the average sale price was 130,000, and I moved to Raleigh, and I thought, wow, we're at 265. That's crazy. Now we're at 428. I just saw the numbers last night. So what do you guys have? What's your average sale price in your market? Give me couple of people. So I've got a 476, 600. I don't know if you guys are saying this is your goal or if this is the average sale price.
Average sales price.
Average sales price. All right. So we've got 600 for Scott. Denise, you've got a 465. We've got a 476, a 350, 200, 550. All right, good. All right, so I want you guys to fill that out right here, average sales price. So I'm just gonna say on my market, it's 425, just so you guys can see kind of where I'm doing this math. Now we wanna multiply that by our average commission rate. We're all in real estate. We should be able to know how to calculate commissions really quickly. Just in case you don't, you take your average sales price and you hit times 0.03 if you average 3%. Our market average is 2.4%. So I would do times 0.024. And I don't have that in front of me, so I'm just gonna quickly in my head try to figure out what that is. So I'm just gonna say 11,000, which is probably not accurate, but you guys are gonna do the same thing. You're gonna come up with your average gross commission on a transaction. Average gross commission. Now I'm gonna throw you guys for a loop here. All right, so we've got $11,000 gross commission is my average commission before any cuts or anything. Keep in mind, we've already built our splits and everything in. But what I want you guys to do, because this is there's a cost of actually doing business, and this is not a hard cost. It's not an operating cost. This is a cost of working with a client. This is maybe gas, maybe it's gifts, maybe it's photography or staging if you've got listings. All right, so for the sake of argument here, and I hope that everyone here is listing heavy or at least wants to be listing heavy, but I'm assuming that plenty of you have buyers that you work with as well. For the sake of argument, I want to figure out what it costs to support a listing, and I want to assign that cost to every client that you work with, whether it's a buyer or a seller. So for me, it costs $295 to get professional photos. It cost me $125 to get floor plans. It cost me $150 to get the Matterport virtual tour. It cost me about $85 to get drone photos. And it cost me $50 to put a sign up. I don't do any of that myself. So when I take a listing, all those things go in. Then I pay my transaction coordinator $200. So I'm going to say that my average listing is going to cost me $1,000 to maintain $1,000. All right. Because I kind of want this to be easy, and also because even if you don't spend $1,000, you could put that into client appreciation events. I want everyone to take that number that a listing costs you, and I want you to assign it to all transactions, buyer, seller, luxury, listing that you just stick a sign in the yard, don't spend any money on, whatever it is. I want you to assign whatever this number is for you guys to all business. And you're just going to set this aside. And if you have money left over in that account at the end of the year, you're going to throw one killer client appreciation event that's going to get you more business. Okay, so for me, each piece of business that I do costs me $1,000 to maintain that client during our relationship. So that means that I'm really making a gross of $10,000 per transaction. All right, next worksheet is very simple. We're going to take our annual goal from worksheet C. So we've got an annual goal of 351,500. Some of you guys are different. All right, so mine's 351,500. Bring your annual goal down. Plug it in here. And then I want you to divide that by your income per transaction after the cost of doing business. So you're going to take this 10,000 or whatever it is for you, and you're going to divide it. All right, so I make 10,000 per deal. I want to make 350 gross. So that means whatever that number is the number of transactions that you need to achieve the goal. So I need 35 sales transactions to make 351 gross. All right, what do you guys need? Tell me.
27.
Stop being so quiet.
I need 27.
27. Okay. All right. Who else?
65.
65. Who else?
25.
25. All right. One more. Who did I lose that has no clue what we're talking about? 18. Stu, 18. All right. So I need 35. By the way, when I moved to Raleigh and I was heavily transacting at the time, I had not started coaching, doing anything like this. I didn't know a single person, no one in this market. And I did 43 the first year. Now, I spent some money to do 43. I probably spent a little too much money to do 43, but I did 43. So if your number scares you a little bit, don't let it scare you. We're going to come up with the plan for how you're going to get there. All right, so the plan. Some of you, when we move into this next section, are going to be really surprised by how easy it's going to be. Okay, is there anyone, raise your hand, you don't need to chime in. Is there anyone that's scared of the number that you just came up with? Raise your hand if the number scares you a little bit. I don't see any hands going up. Okay, raise your hand if the number seems, okay, thanks, Joe. Raise your hand if the number seems extremely doable. Got a couple of mediocres. David, yours is doable. All right. So ultimately, this number normally is a little bit lower than a lot of people thought about. Sometimes it's higher, but let's just pretend that it's higher. That's fine. We're gonna go in down here and we're gonna start breaking out where this business is gonna come from. And this is where the rubber meets the road. We need to know where your transactions are going to come from. So a lot of people have that big overview goal. Hey, I need to make 400,000. I need to sell 50 houses. You've got a big overview goal, but if you don't break it out into different segments, you don't know where your time is going to go when you get into the territory. So I want to hear from you guys. How many already get a steady amount of business from your sphere of influence? Scott, what do you get from your sphere of influence on a typical year?
I think I got 14 last year.
Okay, 14. Good. Anybody else? What do you guys get from Sphere last year? Always makes for a really good video when we have a minute of silence for me with me waiting. All right. Somebody said something. All right. So Scott had 14. Okay. First off, this is not on your workbook. So I want you to take the scratch area up here and list off your leads, your sources of business. List off your sources and tell me where that business is going to come from. So I'll give you an example. Mine is 35. So I want 35 transactions. I'm going to say 15 sphere of influence. I'm going to say 10 probate. I'm going to say 10 circle prospecting. I'm going to say 5 PPC leads. Okay. By the way, this is fairly indicative of where I get, or had been getting the majority of my business. So this is what you guys are going to do. You're just going to name the breakdown of where that business comes from. And a quick overview, watch my screen, of the different sources that we're going to work on today. It's number one, sphere of influence. And I put this right smack in the middle. We're going to come back to this, but this really is the cornerstone for your business if you're an agent. We all love probate. I love probate. I like helping those people. Ultimately, I work probate so that I can adopt them into my sphere of influence. I need to adopt them. The majority of my sphere today came from other lead sources. Once I did business with them, I kept them. At that point, the next time I do business with them, I consider it a piece of sphere business. I no longer think of that as a probate lead after I've done that initial piece of business. So I adopt everyone. When Mark, this is for you, when worked properly, 10 to 15% of your sphere of influence should use or refer you on a yearly basis. 10 to 15. I personally know agents that get 60% of their sphere of influence size that uses or refers them each year. They have 200 people, they get 120 transactions out of their sphere. I'm going to set the bar really low for you guys. You should get a minimum, bare bones minimum of 10% of your sphere that uses you each year. All right, and we'll get into this chart in just a second, but I want to show you the other sources that we're going to talk about today. So we've got sphere of influence, we have probate, because we're all with all the leads. We have probate, we have circle prospecting or farming. Okay, kind of one and the same for me. We have buyer and seller leads. So this would be like pay-per-click leads, Google. Anyone do that? Anyone do any pay-per-click leads? If not, it's a pretty good source of business with the proper expectation. We have those. And then I've also, down at the very bottom of this page, I've added a few blank worksheets where if you have a different lead source, you can plug it in. So those are down at the bottom. But the ones that we're going to talk about today, mainly because this is where my business came from, is I had pay-per-click leads, buyer seller leads. I had circle prospecting. I had probate, and I had sphere of influence. And those were my four cornerstones of the business. And those consistently and predictably would always get me typically about a closing a week when I was selling by myself. Now, if you're going to be a team leader, you probably need to add in some more so that you can spread your business around. You might want to consider maybe some extra counties, some extra lead sources. I used to do radio and television, billboards, and different things like that. Open houses would be another source. But for the sake of this, we're going to talk about sphere of influence, probate, and circle prospecting, and pay-per-click. And we're probably not going to go into all the minute details of every single one. But what do you guys have? So of your number of closings, how many are you all planning this year coming from sphere of influence? Shout out a couple of numbers to me. Of the closing goal that you have, how many do you plan on coming from sphere?
20.
Anybody? All right.
4 out of
4?
14.
14? Okay. 14's better. Right, 14? Okay.
Well, 14's the goal, the total goal for me, 'cause I'm new. So
The total goal from sphere or total goal of,
4 for my sphere
okay,
out of 14 total goals.
great. All right, awesome. Okay, so Amber, what we're going to do is we're going to do this. We're going to build this on your plan 4.
Uh-oh.
By the way, I'm going to show you guys how this can be so much bigger. A lot of you are going to readjust your goals after this. All right, so 4. What we want to do is we want to take that number and divide it by 0.1 which is 10% of your sphere of influence, to find out how many people you need in your sphere of influence. So if we're taking Amber's four transactions from sphere of influence this year, and admittedly, when you're new, your sphere isn't going to rush to do business with you. Okay, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to establish that credibility. Doesn't take as long as you think, though. So we're going to take 4 and we're going to divide that. I made a mistake. Let's do the divide sign here. Divide that by 0.1, and that gives us a really easy 40. All right, so Amber, you need 40 people in your sphere of influence, and couples count as 1. You need 40 people to do 4 sphere of influence transactions. So let me ask you this, Amber, put you on the spot. Is that more or less than your sphere of influence size?
It's less.
Less. What do you think you have in your sphere of influence? Ballpark.
Several hundred.
Several hundred people that you know, that you're friends with?
Say maybe 100.
100?
I mean,
Right.
I'm in different groups, so maybe.
You need to figure that out, by the way. So let's go 100. I figured you were probably fairly social. So let's just pretend 100. I'm going to bet that that's a little bit low for you. So we're going to work this backwards. All right. I'm going to tell you why your goal is too low. So let's take your 100 people that is probably a conservative estimate of the relationships and friends that you have. And instead of dividing 4 by 0.1, we're going to multiply this number by 0.1, and that's going to give us 10. So an audience of 100 people, a sphere of influence of 100 people, should produce no less than 10 transactions that are either referrals or people that directly use you. Absolutely no less. So Amber, we're going to change your number here. I'm going to challenge you to go after 10. All right, and this is going to screw your whole map up because now you have to change all the other numbers, but you're going to go after 10. All right.
Okay.
Now, what's it going to take to get that is where we're going to go. What's it going to take to get your 10 transactions out of your 100-person sphere of influence? And by the way, if you list everyone out on a spreadsheet or in a CRM and you find out you have 200, guess what this is going to go to? 20, right? Minimum. All right. And if you're not getting 10% of your sphere of influence using you, you're just not working it properly. And this is why, as a trainer, and I'm not trying to steer away from probate. That's not what I'm doing at all. I'm trying to point out that a lot of people are dramatically underutilizing the easiest form of business that they have, dramatically. And if you're getting 10%, your next goal should be 20. Your next goal might be 30% of your sphere that uses you, but we're going to start simple with 10% of your sphere that uses or refers you a year. All right. Does anyone have a goal that requires more people than they have in their sphere of influence? Did anyone set a goal up here and you did this calculation? You divided by 0.1 and you realized, oh man, I don't have enough people in my sphere. Does that apply to anyone? Anyone? Okay, so let's pretend for a quick moment that it does. All right, we're going to skip down just a little bit. And we're going to list out the number of people that you need in your sphere of influence to hit your goal. So if you have a goal of 10, you divided 0.1 and you realized I need 100 people, but I only know 50. That means that you need 50 new people in this line right here that I've just highlighted. That means you would need 50 people. So the bottom half of this chart is just figuring out where those 50 are going to come from if your sphere isn't big enough. So the bottom half of this chart is basically going to say, hey, let's just pretend that I need 50 people. I've got a goal of 10. I need 100 people. I don't have 100 people, so I need to add them. All right, so how soon do you need the sphere of influence audience? So I'm going to say, hey, 6 months. I need 50 people added to my sphere in 6 months. My formatting's a little bit off. That means that I need 8 new connections. I need 50, actually, I need 50 new connections. Divide that by 6 months. And that's going to give me approximately, and the math isn't perfect here, but it's going to give me approximately 8 people that I need to add to my sphere of influence every month. So if you're short on your sphere of influence, you take the number of people that you need, you divide it by the number of months that you have to make those relationships, and it tells you how many people per month that you need to go out and meet. And then the rest of this is basically just saying, where are they going to come from? So if it's me and I'm short, I'm going to plan on going to certain business to business networking events. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to go to 2 B2B networking events, and I'm going to have a goal, 2 events, goal of 1 good relationship per event. Okay, so that means every month, 2 of my 8 relationships are going to come from B2B networking. Next is social networking events. And by the way, B2B is kind of showing up, handing cards out, meeting other business professionals. Social networking, I love it. I love social networking. And as we get more into networking, and if you're still a little bit restricted for COVID, you don't have to add these in. That's completely fine. But I want to tell you guys, when I moved into Raleigh, I went to my very first networking event. And I've told this story several times, so you may have heard it. And I walked up to a group, and it was a B2B event. Everyone was there. They were business professionals. They wanted to meet other business professionals. And I walked up into this small group and I said, hey, I'm Bruce. And everyone was really friendly. And one girl looks over at me and she says, hey, what do you do? And I said, I sell real estate. And she said, oh, great, another one. Oh, great, another one. I've never heard that from anyone else, but that was my very first B2B networking event. And I've done hundreds of them since that point. No one else has been that rude, but that was the first interaction that I had when I went to B2B. Later that week, I went to a social networking event, and I went on to Meetup, and I found a group that liked to travel, and I went, and they were having dinner. And so everyone was there talking about common interests, and we were talking about places we traveled, foods we've eaten. We were just there building friendships. And this is how I sold 43 houses in my first year in a new market that I'd never lived in before. We were building friendships off of commonalities. And toward the end of the evening, about an hour and a half in, someone said, what do you do, Bruce? And I said, I sell real estate. And whereas 3 nights earlier, someone had said, oh, great, another realtor, the entire table of about 12 to 15 people turned around and they were like, oh, really? How's the market? Everyone took an insane interest in what I did because I built relationships first. I wasn't there building cards. So that single event, I went to 1 event that month, and guess what? I left there with 5 new relationships. So what we're going to do is, if you need to grow your sphere, you're going to tell yourself how many events you're going to go to and how many relationships you want to make out of that social event. Okay. You may want to add organic additions. So if you're in parents groups, school groups, civic groups, religious groups, you want to be adding people to your sphere, but you want to do it intentionally. You want to go to that saying, I want 1 new or 2 new connections from this specific group, this specific organic function I need, and set yourself a goal. And when you show up, your goal is not to hand a card out and tell someone you do real estate. Your goal is to make a connection that you can follow up on, add to your database, take them to coffee, become a friend, because that's where your business is going to come from. So organic connections, I'm going to say 2, right? And then small group or one-on-one interactions. A lot of you aren't going to do this, but normally when I invite people out to something, I'll say, hey, bring a friend. So I'll call a buddy of mine. Hey, meet me over here. We're going to have a drink. Why don't you bring a colleague? And they all know what I'm doing, especially my good friends. I'm adopting their friends. So every week, every month, I want to adopt one friend from someone that I already know. So you guys can see here that this was my plan when I moved into Raleigh. I wanted to go to 2 B2B events. I wanted one good relationship per event. So I'd get 2 people here. I'd get an average of 5 people from a social event. I would get 2 people from kind of my organizational events, church, civic, groups, different things like that. And then I'd usually take a friend out once or twice a month, and I'd have them bring a friend. Hey, you know anyone that wants to come along for a drink? And with this, every single month for me during my first year in Raleigh, I was adding 7, 9, 10 people every single month. And it only takes about 10 months before I've got a killer sphere of influence list of 100 people, 10 months that I've become friends with that I didn't know the year before. All right, so this isn't that hard. Now, some of you are going to say I can't do an event every week. This does work out to like an event every week. So if you want to do it a little bit slower, no problem. But this is where you go meet people if your sphere isn't big enough. Now, if your sphere is already too big, and there is no such thing as too big, by the way, but if your sphere is, if you do this and like Amber, you realize, hey, you know what? I'm shooting myself, cutting myself short. I was aiming for 4. I should comfortably do 10. If that's you, I'm going to challenge you to set a goal to go out and add more people to your sphere of influence, no matter where you are. We should all be doing these things. A couple of years ago, and of course, I'm in North Carolina, so I did not have a Georgia real estate license, but I ended up landing a development in Georgia in the Atlanta area. And it was going to be 1,700 lots. 1,700 lots. The development itself was going to sell for about $6.5 million. I was one of 2 agents on that deal. The the developers we were bringing in and their builders had all cut a deal to list all their properties with me. So I was basically going to make about $1 million up front. And over the next 3 years, as they built it out, I was going to make an extra $2 million. And I spent so much time working on that deal. I spent 8 months working on that deal. And the week before closing, it died. It fell apart. I was counting the money. Okay. I was planning where it was going to go. And it fell apart on me after 8 months of hard work. And I looked at my sphere of influence. I looked at my business pipeline and it was dry. I had no probate deals. I'd lost attorneys. I'd lost relationships. I'd ignored people that were very valuable to my business for a long time. I'd ignored them working on this home run. And when it fell apart, I had nothing. I had to go back to the basics and learn how, baseball analogy, I was swinging for home run, had to go back and learn how to get on base again. Because when you don't have a pipeline, you're not going to turn a switch and get a closing next month. So I went from sitting pretty to burning through a lot of reserves and having almost nothing. So if this seems too elementary for you, it's not. It's not. I don't care if you're a team leader, who you are, you should be establishing and continuing to expand your sphere of influence, even if it's on a very small level. So some of you guys are going to say, hey, my sphere is really good. I get the business that I'm looking for out of it. And I'm still going to challenge you to set a goal of adding people to your sphere of influence every year. So set a goal and tie events where you can go meet those people to that goal, even if it's just one a month. Even if it's just one a month, I call that getting on base. If something goes south in your business and you run into a hard time, your pipeline dries up, at least you've been in the habit of getting on base and expanding that sphere of influence. Mark, looking at you, okay? I'm not picking on, I'm not going out of my way to pick on you. Mark's been in business for a long time and he's done a really great amount of business. And we've had some discussions recently and kind of realized that the sphere fell a little bit by the wayside while you're out hunting for prospecting business. So you're cold calling where all your warm business that's just sitting in your database isn't sending you anything. So we've created a plan to re-engage with those people. And I'm going to challenge the rest of you guys, re-engage with your people, because there's a lot of easy, low-hanging fruit here that you're just missing because you're not focused on it. All right, so back to Amber's example. We're going to go back up top. We kind of skipped down here. I want to pretend that, and everyone should have a different number. What's your goal? Your transaction goal. Divide that by 0.1. That's going to tell you how many people you should have in your sphere of influence. And then I want you to bring that sphere of influence number down here. Put it down. So Amber's got 100 people, and we're going to multiply that by 8. And this is where a lot of people are going to freak out. So times 8, that means that you need 800 interactions with your sphere of influence on an annual basis to hit the goal, right? And just in case that scares anyone, when I was focused on this, and admittedly, I'm not, when I was focused on this, I would set a goal of 36. So I needed 360 people in my database. Now I'll convert more than 10% of those into business every year, but let's just say I base it on 10%. So I need 360 people. I don't care if you have that many in your database. I didn't care if I had that many in my database. All I cared about was how many interactions I needed on a yearly basis.
There, do you have a file for the
To
Blade?
get that, to hit that goal. All right, 1 second.
I don't. We sharpened it.
Okay. So somebody do that math for me. What's 36 times 8? 360 times 8. 2,900 approximately. So I would need 2,900 annual interactions with my sphere of influence. And a lot of people, does that sound oppressive to some people? It sounds oppressive. Okay, so now all we do is we bring our annual interactions down here. I told you guys, I apologize. This is kind of the nitty gritty stuff, but we want to divide that by the number of prospecting weeks per year. So I take time off. I'm always taking a week off here, a week off there. I want to take time off. So I'm going to work in my business 44 weeks a year. So I'm going to divide that 2,900 by 44. I'm going to find a calculator on my computer so that I have to get to quit doing this in my head. Somebody tell me 2,900 divided by 44. Okay, 66.
66.
So, yep. So this means that that every week I need to interact with 66 people. Okay. And by the way, this is a little bit oppressive. As you get good, you'll raise your percentage to 15, 20%. You'll be able to hit the goals a little easier. So we've got 66 people that I need to interact with in a week. I prospect 5 days per week when I'm in working. So 66 divided by 5 days per week is 13. All right, so I need to spend on a daily basis. I need to have some kind of touch point with 13 people in my sphere of influence. Now, if your goal is 10, that's a lot less than that. Okay, you don't need 13 interactions with your sphere. And by the way, a voicemail is an interaction. A personal note is an interaction. So we're not doing it here, just up in the notes section up here. I want you to list out how many interactions and where those are going to come from. So let's just say I'm going to erase this. I'm going to say of my 13 interactions, I'm going to send 3 notes. So a personal handwritten note. I'm going to call 7 calls. And I'm going to do, well, that's 13. No, that's 10. I'm going to do 3 social media. I'm going to do, let's say this, I'm going to do 2 social media messages and 1 face-to-face. So a lot of people are like, what am I going to say when I call? And we're not going to go into a lot of detail here, but what am I going to say when I call? So easiest call to make is, hey, I'm going to go grab coffee next week. Do you want to meet me on Tuesday? No, that's fine. I didn't really want to buy someone coffee anyway. At least now you remember that I invited you to coffee. So I expect when I do invitations that someone is going to take me up on someone's going to take me up on the invitation. All right. So one face-to-face. Now this is my 13 interactions per day, 7 calls. Probably 4 or 5 of these are going to be voicemails. Hey, no need to call me back. Just wanted to check in, see how you were doing. That's 2 minutes. That's a minute. Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. Hope everything's good. You might even send a text. I don't care what it is, as long as it's an interaction that means something to the person that you're reaching out to. I love invitations. So inviting them to a group or a personal event, coffee, drink, a lunch, something that they can come to. All right. So I need 13 interactions on a day-to-day basis to hit my 36 transaction goal. And that's out of my sphere. Any questions on that before we drop down to probate? We'll go a little faster through probate. All right. No questions. Anybody realize, okay, who expected too much from your sphere of influence versus who dramatically underestimated what you could get from your sphere of influence?
I guess I underestimated. I didn't see the 10% coming from that up at the top.
Yeah, easy.
That seems high.
Easy.
Right.
Easy. 10% is a complete layup. All right. Because I know people that are 50, 60%.
My biggest failure is from my sphere because they were already in my database. I made a contact with them. I put them on a newsletter, drip campaign. They heard from me every month, but I never called. And just this year, 6 of them have already done transactions within the last 6 months with someone else.
With someone else. Oh, yeah. Painful. That happens. I mean, we leave this low-hanging fruit sitting on the table. Now, of course, we're going to lose business. I'm the guy that usually, if somebody doesn't use me, I usually ask myself where I came up short that caused them to go to someone else. But this is what it takes to get that sphere of influence business. And it's not a cold call. This person that you call, they're not going to tell you, they're not going to curse you out. They know you. So it's going to be a smooth interaction, and we just need to take care of our people a little bit more. So for those of you that do email drip campaigns, I don't want you counting your email drips or your newsletters as a part of these interactions. These interactions where I've got 13 here, this has to be something that is personal to them. This needs to be a phone call. A text is fine. It needs to be a face-to-face, a personal note, a social media message, something that is personal. If it's a drip, it doesn't count. Now, you need newsletters, you need emails, you need those things. Those are branding. They're not for prospecting, they're branding. And we'll talk about those later. So keep doing those, but I want these daily interactions to be personal, and realize that most people aren't going to pick the phone up and talk to you for 30 minutes. So out of these 13, I might have one person that I have a 20-minute conversation with. The rest, I'll probably have one 45-minute conversation when I meet someone, but the rest are pretty quick. Hey, just checking on you. There's a lot of different things that you can call for or send a text for. All right, so we've got 13 is what I have to hit a 36 transaction goal from my sphere of influence. By the way, before I keep coming back to this, I know a girl that all she does is she throws 4 social events or parties every year, 4. And her interaction with her sphere of influence is only done when she's inviting them to one of her events. So she starts inviting a month before the event. She'll organize an event. She'll get a lender and an insurance agent to pay for the event. She doesn't spend any money on it. A month before, she starts calling her sphere of influence and inviting them to that event. Some show up, some don't, some are busy, some never respond. It doesn't matter. She gets the invite in. And out of that, she closes over 40 transactions a year. And she's in the Raleigh market with an average price of like $425, $430. She's doing about 16 million a year, strictly off of events. That's it. She really doesn't do anything else. So you can really get a lot more business out of the people that you know than you think. And it's not hard. 10%, David, piece of cake. Now that's not 10% of everyone is going to use you. What that is it's probably like 2 or 3% that are going to refer you multiple times. I have my top referral partners give me 5 or 6 pieces of business every single year, but I'm just looking for about 10% of that audience size to turn into business. Some are direct, some are referrals. It's certainly not 10% of them that actually use me.
And didn't you say once you close a transaction, they go into the sphere?
Yep.
So, okay.
Yep.
So yeah, if I look at it that way, then that helps a lot because there's a lot of repeat business from that. You know, you might have a home, somebody's building one home at a time. We get a few of those. And
Yep.
so if I put them into that category, then that makes a difference too. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep, definitely. All right, so everybody moving on to the next section. We've got another worksheet area here if you need to crunch some numbers up here and then transfer them down once they're a little easier. Let's talk about probate. So I want to start with the assumption that when worked properly over the course of 6 to 8 months, not 68 months, 6 to 8 months, a probate list is generally going to turn into somewhere between a 2 and a 5% conversion rate. 5% is pretty high for a lot of people. Okay. 2% for me is kind of the minimum that I really want out of a probate list. You guys might want to build this on 1%. I don't care, as long as we have a plan. I'm going to do this for the sake of this class. I'm going to do it assuming that 2% of any list is going to use me. So how many probate leads do you receive every year? We're going to work this one a little bit backwards. Someone volunteer, tell me approximately on an annual basis how many probate leads you're going to get.
Well, since I just
360.
started,
1,200.
360, 1,200. Scott?
yeah, it averages about 100 a month, but I've only had 3 months and I've already gotten 2 appointments.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Let's go, since there's a couple of people that had 100 a month. Let's go with the 100 a month. So 1,200 probate leads annualized. And by the way, you don't necessarily see the numbers I'm about to show you until your pipeline is full. So in other words, 8 months in is when I start to expect what I'm going to show you guys. It's not until 8 months until I start to see and predict exactly what's coming in on a month-to-month basis. But let's say that over the course of a year, you're getting 1,200 leads. So we're just going to drop 1,200 down here, 1,200 leads, and we're going to multiply that by our conversion rate. So you guys remember I told you all that I was going to base this on 2% conversion rate. So you do 1,200 times 0.02, 1,200 times 0.02. Need to move my calculator to a different screen. Means 24. All right. So if you're getting 100 probates a month and you're converting 2%, that means that annually you should probably be able to pick up about 24 transactions out of probate. So immediately you guys see here that that our numbers, your goals for many of you are low. Some of you, your goal might have been high. But when you start to break it out, you start to realize that your goals could potentially be low. So let's just pretend that you want to go 1%. 1% is kind of the bare bones minimum of what I'm expecting out of probate. So if I only do 1% of my total leads convert into a client, that still means I'm going to get 12 transactions out of that list. So I want everyone to do that. Take your total probate leads per month, multiply that by 0.01, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on what percentage you expect to get out of probate. If you're multiplying it by 5, you better be really good. Okay, that's pretty impressive, especially in this environment. So percent is more than realistic. All right, so now what I'm going to do is figure out what my daily activity needs to be to get these 12 leads. So I want 8 solid interactions or phone calls or touches. Emails don't count. Personal notes, phone calls count. It doesn't mean 8 conversations. It just means 8 touch points to get the average person to use you. Because you have to realize that a lot of these people, they might answer on phone call number 1 and say, oh no, I'm not interested. I don't have real estate. Jump off of a cliff. I'll scrub those out. So we're taking the average. Some people you're going to reach out to 15 times. Others you're going to reach out to twice. So the average is 8. So I'm going to take this 1,200, multiply it by 8. And that should be pretty easy math. That means that on a year, you're going to have 9,600 outreaches to get your percentage. If you reach out to your list 9,600 times and you don't get a percent, there's a problem. You're probably going to get 2 or 3%. So 9,600 times, that means that we have 9,600 annual interactions. We drop down here. We divide it by the number of working weeks that we have in a year. So I've got 44 working weeks in a year. So that means on a weekly basis, I want to make 218, but I'm going to say 220 phone calls a week. I'm going to bring that down, 220 calls a week. How many prospecting days do you have? I'm going to say 5. Okay, so we're going to divide 220 by 5. And that means that on a daily basis, you probably want to make about 44 outreach phone calls. For the majority of you manually dialing, that's 2 hours. Okay, if you're manually dialing. Has anyone already put in 2 hours of prospecting time on probate? I figured there'd be a few. No? Anybody
Yes,
put
I
an
have.
hour in?
Can I
Okay,
have a quick
Michelle?
question?
Yeah.
So the touches or the interactions don't include the letters and whatnot we're sending them or any email drip campaigns. It's just
No.
the actual voice to voice.
A call or a text or a personal note. Once I've interacted with someone, I'm going to send them a note. I'm going to send them personal pieces of mail, personal. So I do count those as an interaction. And by the way, if they don't answer the phone, that's still an interaction as long as you leave a voicemail. Okay. So 44 interactions on a daily basis. Some of you are going to be able to knock 44 out in an hour. It depends on how fast you are. If you're using a power dialer, you could knock 44 out in an hour. Does anyone do an hour worth of prospecting in the probate space each day? Anybody think, Mark, perfect. Anybody think that they don't, but they could? Don't, but could. Scott, all right. Yep, don't, but could. So this is kind of the overview to be able to close. I'm going to go back here. 24 transactions a year out of probate. It's going to take me 44 touches a day, 5 days a week. I'm not going to do that week in, week out. I'm taking 8 weeks off every year. Okay. So an hour to 2 hours, depending on your dialer of prospecting, and you should be able to get 24 closings. All right. Is that higher than you guys were expecting, or is that lower than you were shooting for?
I actually hired the ISA, so I'm getting 40 hours a week.
So here's where I'm going to challenge.
That
Okay?
doesn't count.
It counts. What it does is it makes your prospecting time significantly more effective, significantly more. Where yes, it counts. I don't think that it's a dollar for dollar count. What happens is an ISA is going to turn over warmer leads to you. You're going to be able to spend less time much more effectively by having an ISA, but you're still going to need to put some time in. And yes, in doing that, you might end up making 8, I'm just ballparking here, 8 follow-up calls a day instead of 44. So 8 follow-up calls a day when you know who the warmest leads are could translate into the same number of closings, but you're still going to need to figure out how many direct outreaches you're going to do on a daily basis. Don't let the ISA be a crutch. I mean, they're a crutch, but
No, I'll be honest. I did the mailings myself because I have a mail room in our office set up for mailing. And I took the templates and I sent the letters out. The ISA was following up, but 2 of the clients called me directly from the
Yeah.
letter.
yeah. That's
And it was
awesome.
our sixth, I can't remember now, but it was the first letter I sent to my other letter went out today, but the 3rd month, I've only had 3 months of leads. I sent out the 6 services that we provide, one of those templates.
Yep. Awesome. Good. Okay. And that's amazing. Depending on the market, I'm not going to ask, since every now and then we have some people in the same market. I'm not going to ask which market, even though I know. Depending on the market that you're in, those are sometimes more effective than others. And what I'm going to tell everyone, okay, let me just take a real quick moment. This is not a commercial, but this is because there are a handful of people on this call that are using the ISAs that I trained and that I work with. And I'm going to let everyone know, because I know there's various different results. So number one is sometimes markets are more receptive to ISA calls. Same as sometimes some markets are a little bit more receptive to an agent call than others. A lot of times, if one person is seeing a couple of leads every day and another person's running like a week in between leads, a lot of times you have to tell us when there's an issue. We are tracking these, but if you are one of the people that's just crushing it, don't quit. Okay. If you're one of the people that isn't seeing great results, you gotta jump on it fast, make a business decision fast. We probably fire like 20% of the ISAs within the first month that they're there. Then we've got this big middle range of ISAs that do pretty good. And then we've got kind of the top 25% that are blowing it up. So in the event that you're one of the people that does have an ISA, stay on it. If you're not seeing what you need, let the team know like right away. I just wanted to put that out because I'm looking here and I see a lot of people that do have ISAs. An ISA should be able to turn over and give you a solid, I mean, once your pipeline is full, it's not going to happen in week 1, 2, 3, 4, but once your pipeline's full, you should be able to make 8 follow-up and nurturing calls a day from leads that have been handed from an ISA. And that should produce a solid 24 transactions, but you're really going to base this on 2% of your total annual leads. That's what you want to base it on. All right, Dwayne.
Bruce, any indication, any history in the ISA scenario as far as success in the type of geographically speaking, more rural, small town, or big city scenario?
I muted you, Dwayne. Unmute yourself. I apologize. I didn't mean to do that.
You hear me now?
Yep. So more
Uh,
success, rural, small town versus big city.
Yeah,
Okay, so rural, it depends on how rural it is. Okay, so it depends on how odd any kind of accent might sound in that town. Okay. With that said, most rural markets aren't saturated with callers, and ISAs, a good ISA will do extremely well in a smaller area, extremely well. Big cities, emerging cities, I'm in one. The average lead here gets like 1,200, not 1,200. I'm looking at the number 1,200. The average lead here is getting a lot of phone calls. So it takes an adjusted approach when you're in a when you're in a market that's highly competitive. So it takes an adjusted approach. Same with you. When you make your calls, you're gonna probably want to have a slightly adjusted approach, because we want to look at what everybody else might be doing in your market. And I have a pretty good grasp on what people are saying in most markets, and make some tweaks and adjustments. So don't just blindly go off of the Probate Foundation script. If you need some tweaks and adjustments, just come to us and we'll make some suggestions on what you might say. Now, with all of that said, let me kind of pull back here. This is in no way a commercial for the ISAs.
that's
It is my
understood.
business. I do run it. I'm happy to have clients, but this is meant to show you guys what you should be doing to generate the business that you want. So we've got 44. If you're getting about 100 leads a month, you want to get 2%, I'm going to challenge you to take an hour on a dialer and try to make 44 calls a day. You're going to leave a bunch of voicemails. So out of this 44, I'd be surprised if more than 5 people answered. There's going to be some days when it's only one person that answers. Some days, maybe 10. Okay. Not normally more than 10. So this isn't going to take more than about an hour on a dialer. If you're manually dialing, it might take 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half. But I'm going to challenge you. Yes, you can leverage your time with ISAs, and I'd love for you to do that. But I'm going to challenge people to learn how to make these calls, learn how to make the calls. So about 44 a day with 100 leads is going to get you to 24 deals a month. So
I'm still waiting on my first lead delivery. So it sounds like a conversation for the future. Thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
reach out, let me know. Send me an email, Bruce at Coach Bruce Hill. I'll send you a link. We can talk about that. So immediately here, I've run numbers here. You see that my number is 36 sphere of influence deals and 24 probate deals. I mean, just imagine, guys, that's 60 transactions a year from sphere of influence and probate alone, using if you make 44 probate calls a day, and if you make 13 sphere of influence dials a day, and that's taking 8 weeks off a year. So we're at 57 calls a day, dials or interaction attempts per day, gets you 60 deals a year. Hopefully you're starting to see what the micro actions actually do to a business. Now, if you're running a team like David is, it might sound like a nightmare to do that when you're managing a bunch of transactions in a team. So everyone's going to adjust differently. But if you're a solo agent, 60 interaction attempts should be done in about 2 hours, and you should do 60 transactions a year if you have the number of leads that you need. Next thing that we want to do, and this is where we're going to start to gloss really fast because we are coming up on 2 hours. We want to do the exact same thing with our circle prospecting. If you're not doing farming or circle prospecting, you're missing out. I think that for me and my business, Sphere was the cornerstone number 1, probate was cornerstone number 2. Those were where I got a lot of business. When I added circle prospecting in, I got even more. If you are not familiar with Ricky Caruth, use Ricky's approach. Go look him up on YouTube and watch him do some circle prospecting. He is not going after the immediate business with circle prospecting. It's a call. Hey, it's Bruce over at XYZ Realty. How are you doing today? Nice weather today, right? Okay. Hey, let me cut straight to the point. Let you know why I was calling, man. We're selling houses in Raleigh like hotcakes. Wanted to know what I could do for you. They say nothing because it's not that many of them that are looking to sell right now. So they say nothing. Okay. Hey, no problem. I completely get it. Sounds like you're set. Hey, let's just pretend maybe 5-10 years down the road, you were going to sell that property. Do you have an agent you'd work with? Yes. He lets them go. No. Hey, do you mind if maybe I keep in touch? Yes. What's your email address? So he uses circle prospecting to build an email list and he gets some business out of it. So your farm or your circle prospecting list, whether it's a geographic farm or maybe like a house type, if you keep up with that list about 4 times per year, you guys are going to notice here the number 4, you keep up with that list about 4 times per year, and annually it should produce about 1 to 2% of your list into business. Might take a year to get there, but it should start to produce about 1 to 2%. So let's pretend that I want 10 transactions out of circle prospecting, and I guarantee the overwhelming, I'd be surprised if more than 1 or 2 of you are working circle prospecting or farming like you could. So let's just say that I want 10 transactions out of my farm. I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to divide this by 0.0. I'm going to say 1 for leads, and that tells me that I need 100 leads. All right, that's not hard at all. No, I need 1,000 leads. Sorry, 1,000. That makes more sense. All right, I need 1,000 total leads. So you go get yourself 1,000 household farm, or you get yourself 1,000 properties that match a specific property type that you want, and you load them up. You call them 4 times a year. Casual conversation. You're looking to build your audience. It's not that difficult. So we've got 4,000 calls per year. So 4,000 divided by 44 weeks. And this is where some of you are going to choose. I told you I wasn't going to have a commercial for ISAs. This is where some of you really might decide that you want to work with an ISA. But 4,000 dials a year divided by my 44 weeks means that on a weekly basis, I want to make about 90 calls. And on a daily basis, 90 divided by 5 means that, so 90 by 5 prospecting days. And guys, if you're doing 2 prospecting days or 3 or 4 or 6 or something like that, that's totally fine. But I do 5. That means I need to call 18 people on a daily basis. The majority are going to be voicemails, no problem. The ones that answer, you might get 2 or 3 that answer. You're going to be off of the phone in 3 minutes. So this isn't a lot of time here. It's maybe 30 minutes. So we're going to do 18 calls if you're doing circle prospecting. So these are the 3. Now we've covered the 3 big pieces in my business. And if you have other big pieces, it's fine. Just plug them in and do the math. So I've got 18 people in my circle prospecting I want to call a day, 44 probates, and 13 sphere of influence. And for the sake of time, I'm going to skip this one, but you're going to do the exact same thing that we just went over with pay-per-click leads. I'm not going to cover this mainly because a lot of you aren't doing pay-per-click leads, but let's pretend that you're doing pay-per-click leads. You're going to do the same thing here to come up with your number of prospecting calls per day. Down here, I'm going to say underneath of our worksheets, I'm going to say I need 13. This says phone calls. Let's change. Some of you are going to change this to personal note, social media message, something like that. But let's just pretend that they're phone calls. So probates 44, sphere of influence is 13. circle prospecting is 18. And I'm just going to total that up and tell you guys that 57, 65, 75, 75 calls or outreaches per day. Shouldn't take more than 2.5 hours. And that's the plan to close 70. If you have enough leads, that's the plan to close 70 transactions as a solo agent. Now, a lot of you don't want 70. Some of you might want 100. Some of you might want 30. You're going to kind of base that on your original goal, your original income goal. But you guys are going to see here that my plan, working, prospecting for a couple of hours, 5 days a week, gives me 75. And if I go back up here to my income goal for Denise of 250, and you're working another job, Denise, I get that. My income goal of 200, I really only need, if I want to make 200 net, I need 35 transactions. I just gave you a plan to do 75. So some of you may want to adjust your numbers. If you're happy with the original transaction goal you have, you can go in and you can divide the plan. You could say, hey, you know what? I don't want 70 deals. I want 35, which is exactly half of what we came up with. So you might spend 1/2 of that time prospecting. So instead of 2.5 hours, give it an hour and 15 minutes a day prospecting, and you've got your 35 deals per year. All right, and that's without any additional lead sources, by the way. Some of you want additional lead sources. If you do, you can run that math down here on the very last page. These are just some worksheets to be able to break down how many calls get you a certain number of transactions on different lead sources. Okay. Now, before I touch on the rest of this stuff, I'm going to touch on it, but let me kind of open it up for a couple of questions, and then I'm going to show you guys what the micro and macro goals need to look like. You guys have anything? I see chat's kind of loaded up here. Okay. Meredith asked, Ricky who? Ricky Carruth. Carruth, Alabama boy, does circle prospecting, really good on the phone, casual. It's worth checking him out if you want to see someone prospect and see how they do it. Right. Anybody else? Stu, it's like growing a flower garden. Yeah, you nurture it. It's going to take a little bit of work, but if you have a plan, you're no longer blindly trusting. A lot of you hit very consistent numbers. Without a plan, you may hit consistent numbers, but what I'm going to tell you is your lack of a plan up to this point is your plan. You're probably doing ritualistic activities that you don't even know are rituals, and those are good for a certain number of transactions. So Scott, let's take you for example. How many did you do last year total? Yeah, you're muted. Probably on purpose. You don't want to say.
No, I was trying to find the screen. I was looking at the sheet here. Very random, but 18, and it was mostly referrals. So I didn't get on the phones like I'm going to.
So 18 came out of your rituals. And my bet, I don't know this for a fact, but with most people that would say that, my bet would be that it was probably 16 to 20 the year before and 16 to 20 the year before. And if it wasn't, then something changed in your structure to lower or raise it. But most people accidentally fall into a particular range. I accidentally fall into about 20 to 25 deals a year when I'm not focused. And that's because my rituals, my social activities just kind of randomly and accidentally pick up somewhere between 20 and 25 deals a year. When I'm focused and I put a plan to it and I know what my day-to-day activities are, I can hit anything that I want as long as I have enough leads for it and I have the proper expectation of what my daily activity needs to be.
Yeah, I've increased every year because I've gotten focused and learned how to stay disciplined and do more consistent activity. It's really all it is.
Yep, 100%. All right, any other comments or questions here?
Real quick, Bruce, I put in a link to Ricky Cruz's website. That's just his real estate site, but yeah, he's got weekly open meetings for discussion on cold calling.
Yep.
Which are really good. So anybody wants to join that, give me a call and I'll send you links to it. It's got a
Awesome.
log in and password to Wednesdays at 4 Central.
Okay. All right. That's outstanding. Last thing I'm going to say here, I'm going to mute this. I'm going to pause the recording before I say this, because I do not want to ever be accused. All right. So now we want to get into kind of macro goals, and this is going to be on you guys. We've done our worksheet. Worksheet's the biggest thing that I wanted to go through. I want to talk to you guys about macro goals. So what I want you to do is kind of bring down your gross income and your number of transactions that you want to work. These are going to be things that you leave in front of you at all times. You got to have a gross income goal and a transaction side goal to be able to track where you are. I want you to tell yourself how many of those transactions are going to be listings versus buyers. I want you to tell yourself what you plan to save for the year. We need to know. We haven't gone over this, but if you have a savings goal, please add it. If your savings or your debt reduction did not go into your big number that you listed up top, you need to adjust to account for any savings that you want to add or any investments or any debt reduction. I want you to tell yourself what kind of database size. And by database, this is sphere of influence. These are people that you know them, they know you. When we get into audience building, probably next month, I'm going to talk about the different kinds of audience, but this database size is sphere of influence. And then you're just going to list out any other goals. So some people personally, I have a goal or I have a sheet. It's called my 50 under 50 sheet. So I'm 42 years old. I've gotten trapped into a lot of work over the years, and I haven't done a whole lot. Okay. I've done some fun stuff, but I've got like 50 things that I want to see, big things that I want to do before I turn 50. So that would be an example here. And I want you guys listing things like that out. What's your 50 under 50 or 40 under 40 or 60 under 60? Okay. What are those extra things that you want out of life? So these are kind of your big goals to make sure that you're working toward major milestones. Annual priorities. Really, really super important. So what do you want to accomplish on your business this year? On, not in. In is, hey, I want 36 transactions. That's in. On your business is what systems do I need to put in place to make 36 transactions doable? Do I need to hire a transaction coordinator? Do I need to build out my drip email campaign? Do I need to build letters? Do I need to complete a probate website? Do I need to create a YouTube channel? These are big priorities that are on your business activities that don't help you're in the business today. As a matter of fact, they really aren't going to help you do any extra closings today. They're going to help you manage higher levels of success later. So as you grow and you move from 20 deals a year to 40 to 60 to 100, having a team to 500 deals, things like that, you don't want business to be all consuming. So if business is going to not be all consuming, it means that you need some systems to be in place, whether it's a hire, an ISA, a transaction coordinator, a CRM, a letter sequence, a website, a video series, whatever it is. That's what you're going to put as your annual priorities. And I call these 90-day sprints. It does not have to be 90 days. Occasionally a project only takes a week to do. Okay, but I want you guys to list those out, right? And then what I do, I'm skipping over two things here. I'll come back to it. What I do is I list off those on the business activities in order on a sheet. This does not have to be on this sheet. You can transfer it over to whatever you want. You can put it on a whiteboard. I name the project. I check it off when it's done. If it's not done, I assign a due date. And I love leaving this up. I make sure I don't delete anything once it's done, because I want to go back in a year and look and be like, wow, because sometimes you can be in the middle of working on your business and feel like something's taking forever. But when you go back and look at your business and you look at all the things that you checked off, it's a huge sense of gratitude, a huge sense of not only relief, but enjoyment, being able to see what you've done on your business, not just the number of transactions you've hit. So I'm going to encourage you guys to use something like this and have it in front of you where you know what your projects are and your deadlines for those projects. If you miss a deadline, just roll it back. Just make sure that you're checking this stuff off on the business stuff. Okay. You're probably going to do this. I don't know where Q1 went. I guess I actually put this together a year ago. It must have been about there 2 or 3 years ago. It must have been about the same time. So everyone should have a Q1 goal. So we've already done our big annual goals. You should have a Q1 goal, a Q2 goal, a Q3, a Q4, so that you know what the breakdown, what milestones you need to hit throughout the year to hit these goals. So if you have a transaction goal of 48 transactions, you're going to end, and it's 400,000. So 48 transactions, 400,000 for easy math. We're going to say, I need to make 100,000 in Q1, 100 in Q2, 100 in Q3, 100 in Q4. I need 12, 12, 12, 12. Now, you know, if you have 18 transactions in a quarter, maybe you need to adjust upward your goals. If you have 6, you're going to need to catch up. So you can kind of see where you are on these different things. And then last thing, and we're not really going to dig deep into key performance indicators until we get to rituals and we set up accountability groups. But I want everyone to have key performance indicators that you're tracking so that you know, hey, here's what I need to hit on a daily basis. And when we get to rituals, we're going to give you guys some tools to be able to do that and stay accountable to those activities. All right, so this, some of you may want to do this now. Some of you might want to wait a couple of months until we get to this rituals lesson. All right, in the event that you don't know where to get business, okay, you're going to go down here to this list, and I've listed off 32 places where I've gotten clients and business from. So if you're just like, hey, I have no idea where to go meet people, I have no idea how to build an audience, here's a bunch of things. Don't try to tackle all these at once. Just pick 1, 2, 3 of these that you're going to focus on. So for me, a lot of you are probably going to start farming a community or a property type or a neighborhood, which, by the way, that's demographic farming. Probably not the right word for that, but demographic farming is kind of like going into List Source or PropStream and saying, I want to know everyone who's owned their house for 5+ years, who has 40+% equity and a house between 600 and 800,000 in my city. And you take that list, and instead of farming a neighborhood, you're farming that list because it matches a specific criteria of property owner. So this is just a bunch of different places that you can go if you want to add and grow your sphere or grow different pieces of your business. Okay, we're not really going to do anything on this. I just threw it as a cheat sheet for those of you that that are thinking about adding lead sources. All right, this is just here in case you want to add any lead sources that you're already working or were thinking about working. So you can work through those to figure out what your daily interactions or outreaches need to be to achieve the goals out of whatever that lead source is. Right, a lot of minutia in this class. This is certainly one of those that is I love teaching it because it's really important. It's one of the hardest to teach. It's one of the hardest for a lot of people to sit through, but I hope it really gave you all some insight into where you are in your business. So how many of you have done a planning session like this before? Anybody done a planning session? A couple of hands. Okay. Anybody forgotten what your plan was and got some value out of this? Okay. No plans and got value out of it. I hope you guys did. We've lost some people along the way through this class. I don't think we lost that many people, but normally I see some people starting to gloss over. I promise the good, the exciting stuff is on the way. The exciting stuff is audience building. So how do you go build your audience? The exciting stuff is what to say and how to say it. The exciting stuff is branding and marketing. So all that's going to be coming along in this series as we move forward. So, and I can't believe that I got it done in almost 2 hours. Is there anything else? Do you guys have any comments or questions?
It was very good. You gave it a different approach than I've seen 2 or 3 other times. So it was very refreshing and kind of helped me see that I'm on track. So very good. Thank you.
Good. I love it. Love it. All right. Any questions, guys? If not, I'll let everybody go. Everyone's going to need a nap. You have my permission to take a nap after this brain work, and then join me in a month. It's probably audience building, so that's going to be really exciting. I'm going to try to put out some extra business planning content. So just be watching your email from all the leads email for some extra content over the next couple of weeks to kind of tweak and adjust certain things. But here for help if anyone needs it.